automating traversing the internet with kind of menial tasks. And there's actually a pretty good no-starch press book called Webbots, programming the internet, that type of stuff, that kind of goes into the basics and teaches you kind of the landscape of what's out there. But so some of the background is my roommate had basically the old days of like selling stuff on eBay. So you buy stuff for cheap and then see if you can buy it for less than sell it for more on eBay. And now the modern version is selling it on Amazon, and it's on like crack because Amazon fulfills for you. You can have them fulfill. You can basically automate a larger portion of this process, up to the point of where you can basically automate a retail business out of your apartment. And so where I came in, I was like, I'm a developer, he's not, and I was like, so I see how they would basically go to like Kohl's, Slick Deals, these sites, go around searching by hand for, just searching clearance, etc., for all, just whatever products, then going to Amazon and looking it up by hand. So my task was to set out and take, basically almost every retail site is set up the exact same way. We have this nav on the top. And it's perfect for crawling, it's just a giant tree. You can just pick one, traverse, and basically I think with Kohl's there's only 2 or 3 sub branches or descendants. And so I just started out with, never really used Python, so I just chose Python, looking up, they have this library called Beautiful Soup, which parses HTML really easily, or XML. And I actually didn't even end up using it. You only need to use basically a browser emulator, which is called Mechanize, as a Python library. And so the idea here is you start at the top level of just Kohls.com, find every link, and then just start crawling. So there is. So I tried to make this as generic as possible, so I could point this at Kohl's or at Best Buy or something. And so this is basically the config file where you have, this is the starting URL, and there's a LXML library for Python, which allows you to basically use CSS selectors instead of XPath, or basically translates CSS selectors into XPath for you. And so what basically the task is saying, these CSS selectors are what I want to find on this page. Pull it out, identify if it's a product. If it is, save it into the database. Mark this page as being traversed and continue going. And so the way that that happens is basically start at the top URL here, and you just need to go. The development process is basically inspecting the page and then determining what do these elements look like and how can I pull them out of the page. And this is running, I ran it for maybe like 2 days out of my apartment on a laptop, and one of the actual interesting aspects of this was, it'd just be one computer hitting Kohl's over and over, and then eventually the second half of this is going to be pull all these products out of the database, search their name in Amazon, and basically run a heuristic saying how many sellers are there, what's the price, and is this worthwhile for me to buy, and then try to sell on Amazon. And so, just having, yep.
It's just selling it before you buy it from Kohl's, right?
Well, you're basically buying it, but you're not. You could do that, but in this scenario, you're not. You can buy it beforehand, and then you ship it to Amazon, and they fulfill it for you.
So you're drop shipping directly to the Amazon fulfillment centers?
Well, you're basically buying it whenever you want. Ship it to Amazon, and then it can be listed forever, and you don't have to store it. It's stored in their facility. But one interesting technical aspect was worrying about just seeing them seeing this bot. I basically programmed it in to do random queries between 3 to 5 seconds, with 3 to 5 second delays between requests. But I figure they're going to just see this IP address and flag that immediately. So,
have you heard about Python Anywhere?
No, I haven't.
So, I don't mean to hijack this conversation, but
sure.
Python Anywhere is great because they do this where they let you run a hosted web app environment And what ends up happening is because they run off AWS, every time you spin up and spin down like your script, the IP addresses start shifting over the course of like a day or two, as it's like they're doing virtual hosting. And from what I understand, you can use that as a great basis and a platform to run web scraping bots, which prevents you from one, leaving your laptop on all night, and two, you can just, I guess, you don't have to worry about the IP address issues, like them banning you for making multiple requests from like Comcast dedicated cable IP address.
Okay. And I think wouldn't you run into similar issues where you can just ban AWS addresses?
I don't know if anyone would really ban AWS because like
a lot of places do.
Yeah, I think like I work at an e-commerce company and we're actually talking about that now, where it's like no end user is going to be coming from AWS.
Yeah, like nothing good's ever come to our AWS.
All right.
So, but my solution was to go route everything through Tor, which is an anonymous, pseudo-anonymous proxy. And it is actually really easy with Python. So there's actually, Tor itself is a network of nodes, but the proxy is called Polipo.
What's it called?
Polipo, P-O-L-I-P-O. And they have an old version of the code base. But basically, you can just say, start up when I connect, route past my browser. So the browser instance so this is the mechanized library. It's a browser. Okay, so I do have it here. So you set your proxy, you start up Polipo locally, and it by default is on this port 8123. So every request made by mechanized will be routed through this proxy, which goes into the Tor network, and now Coles is seeing some random endpoint, Tor endpoint, or Amazon is seeing some random Tor endpoint. And so this is, I can go into the code a bit, and then part of this discussion I wanted to have was like, I was looking for more use cases for bots or crawlers. Like what, basically, I think there's a book from No Starch Press on web crawlers, and it's the premise he kind of opens up in the beginning is a lot of people, they interface to the internet through a web browser, but a lot of people don't realize that it's just text, and there's no reason why a computer can't be fulfilling all these actions for you. And then taking it further, and if you can actually automate some of this stuff, you have basically a competitive advantage for, if you're competing with somebody, you can basically crawl their entire site if they have a similar product, and now you basically are replicating their database. And there's also a legal aspect which is pretty interesting. It's actually a pretty large gray area because it's questioning about whether or not that's illegal. And there's only one case, I think it was this company that was basically hitting eBay back in the day and replicating all of their sales to basically say, here is where, voting notifiers, or to say, here, this product has just reached a point, or something. And they were the only successful lawsuit against a company for crawling. So it's still kind of shady, but as long as you are a good citizen and are not taking down this, accidentally denial of service attacking, it's pretty okay. So basically the program takes in a bunch of selectors and will traverse nodes looking for the configuration of these CSS selectors and then continue crawling. So I can just show you I have a database connection where I've already crawled 6,000 products. So basically, it just extracts the URL. There's a sale price, an original price, and then this would be the string that is searched against Amazon. And at this time, the next step is basically to have another bot that pulls these products, searches the text string, in Amazon compares the price and basically determines a heuristic that will determine the demand on Amazon, and that's the basic idea. So the fun thing is that it just like runs, you just let it go. Once it's set up, it's just collecting all this information, and you can get to a point basically where I'm hoping it'll just spit out, the first version will give you a CSV that you can look in like Excel and just say, these are all the products that you could probably have like a 200% margin or something. I don't know, does anyone have any questions or interesting anecdotes? Otherwise, I can go into the code, or I don't know.
I worked on a project where we were crawling newspapers and taking news and analyzing, like you said, to read news. And yeah, we did like 30 gigabytes of spidering a day. And we never got any complaints really. Even we didn't hide our IP or anything.
Okay.
We only got a complaint once ever, and they just said like, please just slow it down. You're taking all of our data. But yeah, it seems to be somewhat legal.
Yeah.
Is it really because like people are like all traffic is good traffic kind of thing?
I mean, people just don't really analyze logs that much, I don't think, unless they suspect there's something wrong.
Unless the site goes down.
Yeah, like unless you're denying someone's service or taking stuff that is like proprietary. I think if it's out in the public,
if it's available on the
you're
internet,
allowed to take it.
Yeah, basically the case with eBay was this company the reason that they were successful in shutting down this company was that they showed that because of this company, they actually had to scale their infrastructure, that they were...
That placed an undue demand on servers, yeah.
So, in general, it's a safe practice if you're, sane about it, like not making too many requests.
So how long did this take you to write? And
so this is like probably 2 weekends. That's what the beauty of Python and like having these libraries that exist, and it's like you can just kind of piggyback on what already is out there.
And how many items did you sell?
Well, my roommate has been buying stuff by hand, so this was kind of to help him make decisions of what products he should buy. So nothing yet. Basically, the next task is...
so how do you...
Huh?
I was going to say, how do you deal with like the fact that the things on Amazon, the product titles or whatever might not correspond exactly to what you're, I guess, getting off Kohl's or whatever. Like
Sure.
Size 22.5 shoes or whatever could go either way.
Yeah, so basically the first version it'll just search these and pull the first 3 products, and then bubble that up to a human, and be like, you can select the best one of these 3. So it's pretty naive to start. But.
Okay.
What about are you able to make a lot of money in this when there's a lot of expenses, like the Amazon listing fees are pretty high, and the actual like transactions for the payments and stuff and the shipping? Like what percentage of profit do you have to see in order for it to be a profitable arbitrage? Like,
I think it's a subscription model to Amazon where you say like, by me fulfilling with you, I pay however much money. So that's like a flat fee, but
there's a flat fee there.
Yeah, and then it's just the overhead of the sunk cost of buying the goods up front. So if it doesn't sell, it's just like any retail shop where like if you're taking on inventory and you don't sell it, it's lost cost. So that's really the only downside. I mean, it's the other alternative is to not have Amazon fulfill, and you can just do this on a much smaller scale. And
ship it to your apartment and then
yeah,
drop it off.
so finding like things with very high margin but low shipping weight, like electronics or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the takeaway is Python with Mechanize and the LXML library, which gives you these CSS selectors, which allows you to vary. This is a configuration that just says, this is what a product looks like on this page, and you do it in like 5 lines of Python, and it's just incredibly powerful. I actually started, so I'm storing everything in Postgres, but when we started I was doing it in Mongo because there's a lot of code I had to add, support code for when the database, it's waiting for the database to come back with a response. Whereas Mongo, you can basically just say write this to the database, and if there's a duplicate entry or anything, it's a silent fail by default. So you don't have to have any code that handles any database failures. But the problem was I was running on a 32-bit architecture, and Mongo basically has a memory map of all the data into a virtual memory. So on a 32-bit architecture, it ends up being about 3 gigs, not 4, because the operating system takes up about a gig. So switch to a traditional database so that you can store it on disk, because it's just very, we don't need the performance of having this like in memory, or it's very slow aggregation over time. So there's no advantage of having it stored in Mongo. I don't know. Any other questions or anything?
Did you have trouble with some sites using different CSS selectors? Do you have to accommodate all of them, or?
Oh, this is a Python library.
Okay,
So this CSS selector will translate into an XPath query.
Well, I think you might have been saying, what about if they change their CSS? Like, we had that happen. I used to do this stuff, and sometimes they would change their CSS,
Sure.
and then how do you find out it's broken? Do you just not see updates anymore?
Yeah, I think then you go into like logging and that aspect. But that was, it's like basically architecture to have, like this is the config for Coles. This is what Coles products look like. So if it changes, it's just changing a few CSS selectors.
Yeah, I'm just saying that happens.
That is a problem.
When I've done this stuff, it happened from time to time that they were changing it. And then also what we did was when we would go to all these newspaper sites, we'd find a lot of them would be exactly the same because they were owned by the same parent company.
Yeah.
So we'd find out what the parent companies are for a lot of these people. That way we could just presume, and then it would usually work with the template from another one.
Yep. That's actually, looking at Coles, that looks like they're powered by Endeca, which so like all these, this isn't a good example, but like the breakdown of the page is all the same. And then going into like Best Buy or something, it's very similar. We just have a bunch of embedded lists. So I was trying to hopefully get something saying like here's what it was in Kohl's and here's what it is on Amazon for Barcamp, but I didn't finish in time. So there is no proof that this will actually produce a large revenue of money.
Well, if your friend can make money manually, I think he'd be able to make more money like this. There's no reason why it shouldn't work.
Right. So I think.
So, about how many lines of code did this bot end up being?
So it's just these 2 files where basically the architecture is in this products crawler, and that's like 300 line, 330, and then the driver basically says what do the next pages look like right here. So these are just selecting list elements, and you can see there's a level 0, level 1, level 2, which are basically these the multi-level of, this is level 1. And then the view all selector basically will go to every product page. And it will, by default, look for the highest items per page, so it makes the fewest requests. And that's what this is doing, where it's basically selecting the view all if it's available, and if not, falling back to the highest number of items per page. And then you can add, basically these lambdas are just saying, filtering out false positives to give you some predicate to say, when I see a test, a class, an element with a class of test, make sure it is the view all by passing this callback. So, but basically by making it as agnostic as possible to a page, you can just say, maybe Best Buy has a different class for their products, so you can just plug that right in. I did see, when I was looking this up, there is actually an open source Python bot framework that kind of, I think, has a very similar app design where you say, here's kind of what the page looks like or what I'm looking for on the page, and then you can pass it any callbacks, basically pass it a function. So that's one avenue I might go down, is like open sourcing this, but doing it as, making sure it has no connection to any sort of products or retail, so that It's just a
Yeah, you would
anonymous
ruin
bot.
your arbitrage then.
Yeah.
And everybody would do it.
Right. But one other cool aspect of, partly this was like to learn, you know, to pick up Python and web crawling. But another cool aspect would basically be, you know, you're getting to the point of big data where you're storing all these products and all these prices and then comparing it to Amazon and that, but you want to also select, you know, if something has a really high margin between Kohl's and Amazon, but no one's going to buy it, there's no demand, it's probably not a good candidate. So that'd be like a fun Hadoop project to basically go to Amazon and say, you know, here's the product and here's the price, but also here is the number of sellers, here's the number of comments, here's the number of stars.
Yeah, number of reviews. Yeah.
And now you can basically have this heuristic to determine that, but you can do that offline.
I think Elasticsearch might be a better candidate in terms of technology for that.
Oh, what?
Because then Elasticsearch is some kind of Lucene-based search engine, because then you can operate on that data in real time.
Sure.
Instead of with the MapReduce, it's not meant for that.
Right, so there are basically two you have all these products. You can either crawl them on Amazon and then make that decision in real time, or store it and then do that decision as a third step. So.
Yeah, I think instead of storing it and accessing from Hadoop, like why not store and access from, why not store it in Elasticsearch?
Right. Would you have to make that decision like while you're crawling though? No?
You can store it all in Elasticsearch and just do ad hoc queries on it as you see fit later. You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's all I had. It was just a fun side project. Definitely, it's about a weekend or so to like actually get this thing hitting a website and pulling data. If you're, probably less if you already know the language you're working in, but it's definitely, approachable and pretty easy and fun. But I wanted to open this up to like other. I was trying to think of like other things on the internet you could automate. I mean, there's a lot of problems running into CAPTCHAs, but more so of like aggregating data. I guess you're getting down the road of like a search engine at that point, but I don't know, I was having trouble like thinking of other useful